So, okay, well, welcome to my panel. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm Michael Stevens. I work in the video game industry. I've also been a big, long-time tabletop role-playing game guy, even so much that I started getting involved remixing, doing my own campaigns, even helping out releasing a few games. One of which was Made the RPG back in 2008, which was the first Japanese role-playing game to hit US shores in an English translation version, and it was glorious in its kookiness. And also, right now, I just released the Kickstarter of Golden Sky Stories, which is the game that actually got me into My Little Pony. It is a wonderful game about magical animals who help people out with the power of friendship. You can kind of see where the lines were crossing. The editor, or the translator, Aaron, said, "Man, you gotta check this show out." Like, I don't know, man. Isn't this like some kind of giant internet troll thing? Like, 4chan's talking all about it. I'm like, no, check it out. It's just like our game. I'm like, okay. 10 episodes later, I was a Brony. First thing, you have to admit you have a problem.
It's not a problem, it's a solution. Oh, yeah.
Fair enough, sir. So anyways, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about that. Maybe a little later I might be able to answer any questions you might have about this awesome game that's coming out. But I wanted to actually talk about role-playing games in general. Unfortunately, due to technical issues, there was to be a video portion. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen, but it's okay because, like role-playing, we just have to use our imaginations, and that'll be awesome. So, one of the things that I noticed about My Little Pony is about the relationships, as well as how it discusses a lot of personal issues and gripes. And the thing I noticed was that a lot of the characters, and I'm pretty sure this goes for everybody, you know these people. You know who these people are. You know you've met a Fluttershy, you've met a Pinkie Pie, you've met an Applejack. And I also noticed that the first episode, Mare and the Moon, was a great example of discussing that. So I'm actually going to take the order of that episode and talk a little bit about role-playing games and how you can be a better gamer, how to start out, where to find games, as well as improving your group, because your group starts with you, and the more you express and set good examples with everybody else, it will follow, and the results can be absolutely amazing. Silly passwords. Okay, so let's start off. Okay, what is an RPG? We are just looking at pen and paper role-playing games, otherwise known as tabletop role-playing games. In Japan, it is known as Tabletop role-playing games. In German, they have an awesome name for it, Rollenspiel. You gotta say it like something out of Rammstein. Rollenspiel, du hast. And that's what we're just gonna be discussing. So if you're asking me about what's the best way to level up a character in Dragon Age, I'm sorry. Unless it's the Dragon Age pen and paper role-playing game by Green Ronin. They're awesome. So, anyways, so what is an RPG? Well, RPGs are a fairly recent hobby that has come about since the early 70s, maybe even the late 60s. It stemmed off from miniature games, and instead of historical miniatures. Fun fact, one of the first printed historical miniature games was done by H.G. Wells, known as Little Wars, making full use of the little tin soldiers that were available at the time. But role-playing games started from that. That's why Dungeons and Dragons, originally called Chainmail, was essentially dungeon crawls. You had your little guys, and instead of troops, you just had one guy, and you moved in and you fought monsters. It went beyond that, and there's more to it than that. Recently, a game designer by the name of Ryan Macklin of Evil Hat pared down a role-playing game to 4 things, and that is language. The first one is language, and that's the core medium of the RPG. The game uses rules and structure to help describe and focus things in a narrative. In Dungeons and Dragons, the rules help facilitate the idea, the story of these fantasy adventurers running along. Golden Sky Stories, the rules are all about encouraging, doing nice things, helping others, and getting rewarded for that in partial for being a good friend. Marvel Heroic Role-Playing, you actually get rewarded for playing out the heroes in the Marvel Universe as they would. So if you're Deadpool and you're talking breaking the fourth wall, you're going to get experience points for that. And that's a great way of how the rules help out the language. Now, second of all, the other part is avatars. You'll have a personal character in the game. Sometimes this could be like, you might actually have kind of a troop play where you have like maybe 1 or 2 characters, like, okay, well, this character, I'm playing this character when this other character is doing something else. But traditionally, it's 1 character per person. And that character, you will be invested. It's not like Monopoly. You'll have the little race car. Oh no, what's going to happen to the race car? No one cares about the race car. You're just caring about what happens to you and whether or not you go bankrupt. Consequence. Now this is tied in with another thing. Consequence and persistence. This means that your actions in the game do matter. They do play a role later on. And the persistence keeps up within the storyline and grows along with it. Chances are there's no reset button unless everybody makes a ruling to, or you make some kind of solution around it. It can lead to some really awesome stories and really awesome adventures with your friends. Now that we've talked a little about what an RPG is, and kind of like in the opening of the story, Twilight is reading the book, and And then she starts doing some research. So let's do a little research. Let's talk about some of the myths of role-playing games. One of which I want to just nail off right from the way. The myth: RPGs are linked to Satanism or some other horrible thing. This is totally not true. Bunch of all of the spells and all of the connections, they just don't matter. I was thinking not of putting this in because this is a little outdated, but after Pat Robertson in 2013 was talking about how horrible Dungeons and Dragons ruin lives. I never knew books animated and started attacking people, but I guess he's an expert at that. How it happens in this day and age. That is not true. It is all pretend. It is all fun storytelling and adventures. Matter of fact, role-playing is used very often by psychologists as a way to help people out. Even role-playing games can be very therapeutic, letting out emotions and particular feelings in a very safe environment. Another thing. Here's another myth I've got, which is only nerdy white guys play this. Coming from a white nerd guy. Yes, okay, yeah, there's that irony. But I've met a lot of people, all different ethnicities, all kinds of religions and creeds, love to role play, both genders, doesn't matter. And that idea of where it's strictly for X is a lot of garbage. I think I'm preaching to the choir here with the bronies here. You know, love and tolerance. So I mean, a gamer can be anyone. Not everybody is really interested in that kind of thing, and I've gotten family members asking me about, like, so what is it? Don't use any kind of slang terms. Just tell me off in simple terminology what it is. And you know that's fine. I just say it's a story game. You get a book, you have some characters, and you hang out for about a couple hours. It's like a little party. It's awesome. Oh, is that it? So one of the other things here is, and I hear this often at game stores, and that is, you need to play D&D or another popular game at the store to start. And I'm going to say that this is totally not true. RPGs is one of the most incredible forms of entertainment, in the fact that you can spend very little money and have hours and hours of entertainment with your friends. You do not need to have tons and tons of books or everybody to have the player's handbook. All you need is one book, and these days there's PDFs, and it becomes common practice to go ahead and loan out a PDF so other players can look at the rules and study up. And this is perfectly fine. I mean, you loan over the book, say, oh, hey, you know, we're trying this. Check out the rules, and we'll be making a character next week. So you do not need to exactly know D&D, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu. Any of those games, they're great games. Don't get me wrong, but you do not need to learn up on that to join up with a group. You will definitely need to learn up on these things, and that's a given. But you will not have to buy those things to get introduced into role-playing games. There are a bunch of different introductory role-playing games out there. Some like the crunch of D&D, others don't. Okay, I'm good. Okay, this is the one time I'm going to do a cheap plug. Maybe the second time. This is an awesome introductory game. Okay, cheap plug time over. Okay, now here's the other thing here. This I got from a friend who doesn't play role-playing games, but he was a former actor. He loves doing writing and directing his movies, and he used to do fan parodies and fan dubs. And he asked me, why all the rules? Why are all of these rules? Don't they all play the same because they all run in your head? And that's not true. Like I mentioned with the whole idea of language, with the whole 4 items of the RPG, that all of the rules do something differently. For example, as I said, D&D is all about adventurers. Savage Worlds is all about like pulp action and driving around on top of cars and punching dudes off of airships, that kind of thing. The rules are designed for that specific feel. Made RPG was designed to be completely random because you just roll dice to make your character and you have no idea what you are making. And it is awesome. Like, I've suddenly made a necromancer runaway ninja cat girl. Who became a maid for the money. It's crazy stuff, but there's a lot of great mechanics out there that you can adapt for anything. Here's one other myth. The idea that you need a particular official book to do a setting. Very much like how a lot of people will make custom mods for Minecraft or say Steam games or other cool PC games, like all of the Crazy Pony add-ons. Those weren't made by the company. They'd be in big trouble by Hasbro if they did. But it's all fans, and they put them in and worked them in. And that's the same thing what you can do with role-playing games. Look at the engines, look at what plays, and you can make it. Some take a little more work than others. But they all just have like different handling and feeling. I'm sorry, I just kind of failed my persuasion roll there. But when you're adapting, but you can easily adapt particular characters and situations into a game, and it's really not difficult. And it could be really cool. For example, let's take My Little Pony and put it in other things. A lot of people love mashing it up. And this is the reason why we have Rule 34P, which is, if there's something of it, there's ponies of it. So you could have, say, Dungeons and Dragons with ponies. And it's pony adventurers, and they're fighting cute beholders and things. Call of Cthulhu and ponies. Or it could be like a game. It would essentially be like Scooby-Doo with ponies, with eldritch horrors that will eviscerate your mind. But And Pinkie Pie might as well have a chainsaw on her hoof, but which would be pretty cool. Or even Fiasco. Fiasco is this really crazy game designed to simulate Coen Brothers movies. You don't really, you just roll dice in the beginning, and then you're rewarded dice for scenes, and then there's a final scene where your character, who has very poor impulse control, may or may not be harmed or ruined, just like a Coen Brothers movie. I mean, can you guys think of My Little Pony meets a Coen Brothers movie? Oh, wait. I'm thinking, oh wait, there was that thing with Big Lebowski. So anyways, there's all kinds of ways that the games play. They can be very, very fun, very silly. They can be very serious. There's just a lot out there, and you should definitely take a look at the feeling of the game and how they handle it. Just like a video game. Some shooters are just different than other shooters. Other shooters are exactly like other shooters. You know, that's the problem. You know, we have Call of Duty. You have all of the Call of Duty clones. Well, you know, you have all of the D&D clones. Or the whole D20 glut of the early 2000s, where everybody had to make it D20, even if the game didn't quite fit. But anyway, so I think we've talked a little bit about the research and the different kind of games that you can check out. So in the story, Twilight sends off her letter, and what happens? You guys didn't see this episode? Yes, she gets kicked out. She gets kicked out of her laboratory and told, go make some friends. And that's, unfortunately, as awesome as the books are, and the books are great to read by themselves, but in order to do role-playing games, you are going to have to meet new people. And these people, the people that you want to play with, will, chances are, be your friends. Or make new friends. And so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, where do you RP? Where do you go to do role-playing games? Well, first of all, there's the obvious thing. You drag your friends into this. You play a game I like to do. It's really awesome. I hold up a rag and say, excuse me, does this smell like chloroform to you? No, in all seriousness, you just talk with your friends and say, hey, do you want to get together? We'll have a little party, we'll get some pizza together, and we're going to be playing out characters and set up a game that way. It could be as easy as that. It could be just getting together family members who might want to give it a try, or just be involved with you. That's the important thing. Just like the episode of with Applejack. It's not exactly the what, but the who. And so first, but outside of that, outside of like friends, family, co-workers, there's also other places you can meet. There's definitely conventions. Have you guys heard of these? These are awesome. There's also what is known as the FLGS, your friendly local game store. Every game store tends to have a cork board somewhere in the place where people can post up where local games are happening. Phone numbers to call and emails to meet up for different groups and different games. There are also college clubs. You can form a college club if you happen to be in college or in high school. I actually, when I was in high school, I formed an RPG club. It was a lot of fun. There are also online ways to do this, like meetup.com. Meetup.com is great because there's always D&D or RPG groups in your area, and you can always talk with them, meet with them, get together with a group. In many cases, a lot of these are meetups, so you can meet up with other people and actually form groups on your own. There are other things, like for the daring, you could go to 4chan's TG board, and they often have a game finder where you can look for people running games, both physical or online. There's also Obsidian Portal. These are just a few options. There's also RPGNet. RPGNet is a very cool website with a very friendly forum. Been very cool, and they actually have like find groups or announced meetups. That's a great way to look for it. Online, nowadays with the internet, with all the kinds of different connections, we can now send messages to everybody. We can do video conferencing, super easy. We can do voice chat. It is incredible, and it allows role players who are in totally different states, or even across the country. I participate in a 4th edition D&D game where half of the players are in Europe, the other half are spread all over the United States, and it is fantastic. And we just do play by post. But there's other ways to do that. There's also Google Plus. The Google Plus Hangouts are a great way for video conferencing. There's also a new website that just came out called Roll20, and it has like virtual tabletop space. You can sign up for games or work together, getting a game together. It's good stuff. There's also other kinds of things like that, like RPG Tonight, which is another helpful thing. But when you get together with a character, or when you get together with a group, and you finally form a group, or you announce something that you want to play, it comes down, I think, to the elements of harmony. And I thought it was absolutely awesome that in the show happened exactly how I wanted to address, and how each of these parts of being a good role player and being a good player, being a good guest and being a good host kind of entwines. And I don't want you thinking that this portion is going to be pedantic. I'm not going to do that. We all know our manners, I hope. But there's some times where we do get a little nervous, we do get worried, and we're concerned about our friends and how they think about us. And that's one of these are some of the things that I want to talk about, so you can discuss with the other players when it becomes an issue, if it ever becomes an issue. But, okay, so first of all, when Twilight lands in Ponyville, after having that awkward moment with Pinkie Pie, she meets up with Applejack, who is the representation of honesty. And honesty is, I think, the linchpin for any gaming group. Any group that gets together, plays together, but especially in role-playing games. I think this is, bar none, the absolute essential. Because you need honesty. If you can't trust the other people in fair play and not going to be jerking you around, what's the point? You have to be honest if something is bothering you and when there's something that you want from the game. If you're thinking that, like, well, and this is important because I've gotten several stories about people not really being clear about what they want in the particular game. I've heard a story about some guys getting together and saying, "Hey, we're going to do a superhero campaign." Problem is that's incredibly broad. There is so much comic book superhero stuff out there in all kinds of feel and level that is radically different from each other. And so that's what happened. 3 guys were playing like Silver Age, tongue-in-cheek, kind of, all right, let's go punch out these bad guys and do it again the next episode. And then another guy created this grim, dark 90s pouches and guns guy who started murdering the bad guys. That was kind of a no-no back in the Silver Age. You're supposed to knock the bad guy out, haul him off to prison, and you know, he breaks out in about 3 weeks. But that's the way things roll. And in the 90s, it's all about how many bad guys can you slaughter. And, you know, hey, you want to do that? That's fine. But there was a definite communication issue there. No, they just said comic books, and that was it. When you start off a group, make sure that you know and tell everybody what you want to play, what you want to get from it, and ask them what do they want to get from this. There have been cases where one person was designing this entire game of intrigue, and all the other players wanted to do was just run around and bash things upside the head. It happens. But that's when you have to know. And when you say, well, I want to do like this cool intrigue story, and they say, well, but we would rather just go around running around a dungeon and hitting things upside the head, well, I say, great, when are you running it? But yeah, and this goes for certain with also be honest when something is bothering you, when you're not finding something helpful. Several GMs have come up with this great system called shades and lines. Some of them have different names for it, but what shades and lines mean is that when you shade over a certain topic, that means that you do not want this to be the center of the discussion. In games, depending on I know kids are here and whatnot, but sometimes some players want to do a more mature game. And even when it's a mature game, sometimes the players just can't handle the subject matter and it's just too intense and it just doesn't work out. And so that's what shades and lines are. Shades means that when you shade something, it means that something can be in the game, but it's not going to be the focus on it. A line is specifically drawing, that's the line, we are not going to cross that. I'm pretty sure I don't need to draw any examples of this, but think of a bad thing you don't want done in a story with your characters or with your characters involved, and you can pretty much come up with how that works. The final thing about honesty is that you have to separate your character from the player, and you shouldn't be too worried about what is and what isn't in character knowledge. Your characters may know something different than you, but everybody should trust each other in that you're trying to tell a good story and not trying to meta game or power game around everything. And just let me know if I'm throwing out some jargon that you're not getting. I'll answer and see if I can clear the air. So after after Twilight visits after Twilight visits Applejack, she meets Rainbow Dash, who is the element of loyalty. And this is fairly simple. Pretty much just stick by the other players. Sometimes there might be a game that you might not like, but you know what? Give it a shot. You might actually find it to be a lot of fun, more so than you thought otherwise. Just like how she did with Dare and Do. Even when something doesn't go your way, work it out. Because one of the coolest things about games is sometimes you don't know how a role-playing game is going to turn out. Failure can be awesome as long as the failure is interesting. Who is the greatest super spy of them all? James Bond. Does James Bond ever get captured? Of course he does. He always gets captured. He would be a horrible super spy in the real world. I mean, everybody knows his name. People tip him off. He just kind of waltzes in, and bad guys just toy around with him, and then they lock him up in the chamber. But he gets out. He gets out of these issues, and he overcomes adversity. And that's what makes it interesting. So sometimes definitely stick with it. Even when other players mess up and screw over a plan, pardon my French, it can lead into totally unexpected areas that would be incredibly fun. One time, we were playing a game where our characters were looking for these people who got hit by a catgirl virus, and they were shipping them off to other dimensions, and we had to rescue them. Only problem was their tech expert totally botched the roll, and the dimensional gateway opened and sent them to every which way. And so we actually had to go to different dimensions to capture a bunch of catgirls, which was pretty cool. And then even later we find out that there's now a catgirl army spaceship. And this all came from a single botched roll. We had no idea, but our GM was really cool. He ran with it, and it led to some pretty cool situations, and led to even some discussions about free will as well as acknowledgement of one's identity. And that was really sweet. So while we're in the subject of Rainbow Dash, I want to talk about the rule of cool. Can't talk about Rainbow Dash without cool. Perhaps 20% of it.
Yeah.
And what the rule of cool is this. Unlike a lot of other games, role-playing games allow you to do all kinds of fun things, and allows you to sometimes color outside the lines. And what rule of cool is essentially, if it's cool, even if there isn't a rule for it, even if the rules say this shouldn't happen, let it. It is fun. Anything that adds to the story, work it in. Always put in yes and. Not, no, it's not in the rules, so we can't do it. Yes. Yes, and this other thing happens. Or yes, but there's also this other kind of complication. But just run with it, and it can be a lot of fun. Now we get to rarity, the element of generosity. Now, here you should always, even if you're not hosting a game, you'll tend to, it's a good idea to help out. Bring in some drinks, arrange pizza, offer to run it in your house if you're able. Do something extra that you can add into the game. Even adding in like an in-character blog that would work in like the other characters just adds to the experience for everybody. It helps things out. Donate your time and ideas into the group. It's always helpful. Then we get to Fluttershy, the element of kindness. Now, one of the funny things about role-playing games is and the best things about role-playing games is that you get to have a say and do something and you want to actually get involved. But there's going to be times where you're going to be needing to listen and to watch others. And this may be one of the most difficult things you can do in a role-playing game because one guy is awake, everybody else is asleep, and everybody wants to do something. And it can be frustrating, but even when you're not in that scene, it's best to listen in and figure out what is going on because the GM's probably going to be laying out ideas and things for the story. Also, you may want to help others, and you should definitely help others in the game. Involve them into your story. A lot of people say like, oh, I want to make Wolverine because he's so cool and he's such a badass loner and he can go do anything. Here's the problem. Wolverine belongs to about 5 to 6 different superhero groups. That's not what I call a loner. Now, he might do his own thing now and again, but he's still a team player, and he still involves the other characters in some point in his different arcs. And he gets involved into those arcs. He might help Jubilee. He might help. He might butt heads with Cyclops. He might be macking on Phoenix. It happens, but there you go. But try involving other players into your storyline. Work them in a way where their story and your story coalesces. Because otherwise it just kind of gets a little awkward. One of the best parts about My Little Pony in the beginning was watching how all of the other ponies were friends with Twilight, but they weren't really friends in the beginning with each other. And watching them kind of mesh together and try learning how to work with each other was very interesting. And the same thing can apply to stories, to the stories that you tell in your role-playing games. There also might be a shy person or somebody who may be a little slow. I'm not saying slow, just somebody who likes to just take their time and be a little more precise in how they want to go about an action. There's always going to be a player who's going to be very loud and wants to burst right in and say, I'm going to go stab the orc. And that's going to be fine. But then there's other times where everybody's just going to say, hey, cool it. Hey, Joanne, what do you want to do? And give her a moment to think about what she wants to do. and respect that as well. Make sure everybody gets involved, because there's always there tends to be the one person who just likes finding a corner, hiding into it, and playing their games on their cell phones. And that's going to be something where you just have to involve that person and to ask them, so what should you do, and help encourage and come up with ideas in that matter, help break them out. Introvertedness does not mean that the person does not want to do stuff. It just means that they're very selective. But just make sure that everybody gets a say, and that's one of the best things about it. This could also be involved with helping people learn the rules, sharing over things, and helping improve upon ideas. I heard a great story of one guy saying, "Oh no, we don't want to deal with these bandits. But we don't want to fight. How do we do this?" And then one guy says, "I got a great idea. Just roll with it. I'm going to pretend to be like a bandit inspector from the bandit union, and that's how we're going to play this. Okay? So just come on, roll with me here, guys." And everybody said, all right, let's go with this. And they were able to pull it off. So, and then finally we get to laughter. And this, I think, this is kind of overlooked, because so many role-playing games have a lot of grimacing characters with large swords and dangerous things, and it looks to be like the most unhappiest thing ever. I don't think I've ever seen a single Warhammer 40K product where the characters are smiling. Gene Stealers don't smile, by the way. And but one of the things is that have fun with it. Have fun with your games. Go ahead. It's a game. You're with friends. If there are elements in the game that are making you anxious, try finding ways around it. At the same time, respect where the game is going. If you were in a Call of Cthulhu game, if you're in like some kind of horror game where it's very suspenseful and things are around every corner and you don't know what's going on, maybe this might not be the best time to do an MST3K style joke. Sometimes it will. But just try your best not to just run over the entire story with complete inanity. I'd like to end off this part with a quote from Joss Whedon, and that is, make it dark, make it grim, make it tough, but then, for the love of God, tell a joke. and you should, because a lot of the best stories, even My Little Pony included, has elements of, there's a little bit of drama, there's a little bit of silly, there's plenty of silliness, there's plenty of fun, but there's also a little bit of danger as well, and elements. I couldn't believe that my jaw dropped when Rainbow Dash quit the Wonderbolts. There was an incredible build-up for 3 seasons, and she just quit. And right then, that hooked me. But even before that, I was laughing at Pinkie Pie playing with the mailbox. So it doesn't always have to be super silly, and it doesn't always have to be super grim, where a bunch of adventurers, no cuddling allowed. None of that stuff. Have fun with it. When you put it all together, and you get a gaming group that just gels. And you know what? There are going to be, I want to just say this right here and now. Sometimes there are just going to be some groups that just don't work. And even and you should help them out, you should try educating, but sometimes some people just don't want to learn, and they'll refuse. And there's a statement that I think is very crucial at the end of this, and that is, no gaming is preferable to bad gaming. If you're in a bad situation, try seeing about making it work, and if you can't, get out. You can try again, you can go elsewhere. Just because you're not really working out well with your friends doesn't mean you have to swear them off. It just means that maybe they might not be the best person to do games with. Pinkie Pie learned this with Rinky Doodle Donkey. We all have friends who have different interests. It's okay. But when you do get a group, that gels well, that respects each other, trusts each other, has a good laugh, gives with each other, you get the sixth element. You get real magic, and that is awesome. And that's it. Any questions?
Can I roll initiative?
Yes, you may.
I rolled a natural one.
Too late, the gazebo wakes up and eats you.
What is your opinion on Munchkin?
Munchkin is a fun little card game.
Excuse me. Could you repeat the question?
Oh yes. The question was, what is my opinion on Munchkin? You're talking about the game by Steve Jackson Games, available at Barnes & Noble. It's just a fun little card game. It is making fun of like probably the worst aspects of role-playing gamers. The Munchkin, the crazy power gamer who just wants to level up all of his stats and just beats everybody upside the head if it means that they get more experience points. It happens. But Munchkin by itself as a parody is fantastic. It's not great as a philosophy though.
Oh.
Any other questions?
Do you treat Warhammer as dark as it is, or do you actually like make jokes along the way?
Well, in Warhammer, I was more referring to in the way of the products and how they're presented, which it's all a bunch of grim, shaved head space marines running around blasting the hell out of things. And that's cool. But a lot of the fun I've noticed has been people making fun of Warhammer 40K and how absurd it is, and just running along with it. Yes?
If I were to run a campaign online, do you have any recommendations about sites that I could go to that help the GM supplement materials for the players?
Yes. Okay, so the question is, if you are starting a game online, and what is a great way to distribute material to the players? Is that correct?
Or like even host games?
Oh, to host games. I already discussed that. That was Roll20, Google Plus, the Google Hangouts. There's even Google Hangout conventions going on. There's one happening very soon that's going to be all lady run.
Thank you.
But that's a great way. And then also to distribute information, there's this awesome thing called email. There's also one other thing. There's a site called Obsidian Portal. And Obsidian Portal is actually a blog that you can make that features everything you need for that group. So you can access character sheets, access the world, put in like particular situations and things of that sort. So there's that as well. You had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, are there some good MLP tabletop games in development?
Are there any good My Little Pony tabletop games in development? My Little Pony, unfortunately, it's owned by Hasbro. Wizards of the Coast have only announced a My Little Pony role-playing game, only as a joke. And there are some fan-made free role-playing games out there. And there are those. I've taken a look at a few of them. Some are some are modifications of existing systems. There happens to be a version of My Little Pony for Savage Worlds. And then sometimes there are going to be similar games that you could easily work around, like Golden Sky Stories. It's magical animals, friendship, magic. Yeah. And if you act now on our Kickstarter, you could get the Pony Hen gay.
What's it called?
Golden Sky Stories.
Thank you.
Check out our Kickstarter. So there are several of those. Some of them are just, we put in ponies and then we put in a combat magic system that I don't think is incredibly appropriate for My Little Pony, but you know, your mileage may vary. Yes?
Okay. Comment and a question. I personally think that a really good My Little Pony or tabletop RPG is role-playing is magic.
Okay. Well, there's a recommendation. Role-playing is magic is a good My Little Pony game.
And also, I haven't put it together, but we haven't been able to meet up anywhere and
Mm-hmm.
conflicting schedules. Do you have any recommendations?
Yes. He said he has a group of friends, they want to play, but they have conflicting schedules. This is what is known as herding cats. You will face this a lot. It's more or less, you guys are just going to have to figure out of what times that you guys can get together. Maybe you might need to just do play-by-post and just post when you can and do it that way. If you want to meet together and handle a session that way, then you're just going to have to make some kind of schedule far in advance, maybe a month or so, and schedule it then and just say, everyone who can make it, make it. Sure.
I had a sort of general question about, it seemed like, so maybe with the series like Conqueror or maybe with some of the superhero stuff that you're talking about.
Right.
It seems like there's a lot of characters that everybody loves and people identify with, and this is a big aspect of the franchise. But the point of the RPG is creating your own character, not just using them for the myths and about the what do you think is the best way to sort of walk the line between something that everybody identifies with, everybody likes, and sort of encourage to be creative for yourself?
Well, I think there is no line between each other. That is, you are correct. He was talking about how role-playing games, a lot of the fun is in creating your own character, but then there's also games where it's also fun to create or bring out an established character. And those kinds of things are both interesting, and it's also where you want to go with it. there is plenty of creativity involved with having a character that has already been given to you, that you already know, and try working it in and just establish, okay guys, rule in this game, my Pinkie Pie is going to be, might be a little different, but we're just going to consider her the canon Pinkie Pie for this story. And I think as long as you shut out that guy, the, oh, I'm sorry, Han Solo would have known where the Wookiees are, then you're good. Do we have, can I get a staffer here? Do we have time for how many questions? Is the other panel here? Oh, yes, the panel is here. Okay, I think I'll have just one more question before.
I was looking at the Fallout Equestria PNP, and there's a lot of content for it. Do you know how balanced it is? It really is, or have you ever seen it played?
Unfortunately, he asked Fall of Equestria. Fallout Equestria. Fallout Equestria, I am totally unfamiliar. I have heard of Fallout Equestria. I've heard about it just being like this massive setting, and there are role-playing elements. Whether or not it's balanced, I cannot say. I haven't looked at it, so I apologize. Okay, one more.
Oh, I'd like to weigh in on this. I've GM sessions of the Fallout Equestria role-playing game. It's extremely well balanced.
Well, there you have it. RPG panels, connecting gamers.